Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today is November 6th, 2018. And with this video, or starting with this video, we are now going to start having some serious technical discussions. I'm also going to be presenting some serious, in-depth technical talks related to ongoing subjects, technology that is already pre-existing. And in addition to this, the new series of technology that I am currently releasing. Now, the topic of today's discussion is going to be ethics. What are ethics and how are they properly applied? Plain and simple. So first I will cover exactly what ethics are, for those of you who do not know. Excuse me. And I will also clarify what ethics are, because they are either not being applied or are being misapplied, not only in the indie field or the independent Scientology field, but within the Church of Scientology itself. Now, what are ethics? Quite simply, what ethics are an internal moral sense of right and wrong. That is what a person's individual ethics are. This also corresponds to a group. What are the group's ethics? Would be a collection of what each individual group member considers to be right or wrong. Now, this is far from morals or mores of a society, which are commonly known as the laws or laws that are quite frequently passed by the majority of voters without the input of many individuals. Whether or not they agree with them is irrelevant. So these are what we call morals. This is what society tells somebody they should or should not do, whether or not they agree with that or not. And ethics are quite a bit different from this. So to give an example, well, what are ethics? Okay. So say, for instance, you have a farmer, simple farmer. He works very, very hard for what he owns. And one evening, a couple of gentlemen decide that they are going to come onto this farmer's property and steal some of his cattle, for instance. Now, of course, this gentleman feels he has worked very, very hard for what is his. It is his personal property. And further than that, nobody has a right to take that away from him. So there are three gentlemen that decide they are going to come on his property this particular evening, and they are going to truck off some of his cows, for instance, and resell them. Now, of course, this gentleman has and does own his own firearms. So he pulls out a shotgun, shoots, and kills one of these gentlemen. And the remaining two, they flee and are not later apprehended. Nobody knew who these gentlemen were in the first place. Now, this gentleman was protecting what he felt was his. It was his property. Nobody had the right to trespass. And further, he had the right to defend himself. And this is what he ethically felt was correct in this circumstance. So he shot and killed the other gentleman. Now, of course, you have law enforcement gets involved, and a lot of times they will say, no, this is incorrect. What you have done is murder, or what you have done is manslaughter, for instance. And this is the mores or the morals of the group, of the society at large, of whatever state that this particular gentleman inhabits. And they're telling him, no, this is incorrect. This is murder. We don't care. You do not have the right to defend yourself. You do not have the right to do what you feel is ethically correct and defend your property, yourself, and your family. Now, while this may be morally correct under the auspices of the law, it is completely incorrect for what this gentleman had to live through and experience and do at the time to prevent his property from being taken from him. Now, that is the difference. That is the cut and dry difference between what are ethics, all right, and morals. Ethics are someone's internal or moral compass in their own inherent belief in right and wrong, or right and wrong actions specifically. And this correlates to thoughts, emotions, any variation thereof. All right? Now, Morals, on the other hand, are that which is enforced. Okay? Now, in Scientology, ethics were specifically designed. The whole purpose for ethics, right, is that ethics existed so that tech may be gotten in. That's simple. And what does this mean? This means that the whole purpose of ethics were to get individuals to look at their own moral sense of right and wrong, their own productivity, what they were doing ethically, and how they can improve that towards the better, which would then allow them to feel better about themselves and remove any barriers, ethical or moral barriers within their lives that would prevent them from benefiting from Scientology or Dianetic processing. Because if somebody is continually out there doing unethical actions, you cannot then process them. You cannot increase their intelligence, their well-being, and all these other things. You cannot have them confront traumatic experiences in an auditing session because they are not confronting their own lives. They are not confronting what they are doing personally and ethically on a day-to-day basis that is wrong because they are not correcting those actions. And let me emphasize this point. Now, technology was created, or ethics, excuse me, the technology of ethics was created so that the broader range of Scientology and Dianetics technology could then take place. Okay? And what I mean by ethics are either not being applied or they're erroneously being applied is this. For one, they're just not being done or they're being misunderstood. Now, those things can be resolved very easily. But I will leave you with one specific point in this talk, in this discussion, above all else, and is this. Ethics, under no circumstances, can ever, point blank, be enforced upon somebody. You cannot enforce ethics. I could come here and stick a gun to somebody's head and say you are going to do what you know personally to be wrong. Now, they can either lie to you and say they're going to do it anyway, but they're still not agreeing to you. Right? Or they can say, hey, get lost. You could take their head clean off their shoulders. Right? And you still never enforce them. You still never forced ethics upon them. You cannot enforce somebody to change what they morally or personally and ethically believe is right and wrong. Cannot be done. Look around you. Happens all over the planet. If this were the case, we would have no murders occurring in the United States. Everyone knows you kill somebody, you do life in prison. Does that prevent people from killing other people? No. Never has, and it never will. On the other hand, if you teach that person something, for instance, a religion, a philosophy, or you just simply point out the fact that, hey man, you shouldn't kill other people, because you know what? Would you like somebody to come in here tomorrow and end your life? And they would say, no, I wouldn't want that to happen to myself. Oh, you know what? So I don't think I would do that to somebody else. And of course, if they're relatively sane, they will not do these things. So let me emphasize this again, ladies and gentlemen. Under no circumstances can you ever enforce ethics upon someone. And this is being done all throughout the Church of Scientology. And it is almost asinine and it is laughable that this is occurring. Why? Because there are people within the church, especially upper levels, that are continuously being regged. They're continuously going in for security checks. Now, the reason this is laughable is because all these case factors are handled and addressed on the lower section of the bridge on grade 2. Confront, overts, withholds. Grade 2. All your sec checking is done. You pull all the overts and withhold that somebody has committed. So if they attest to that grade, grade 2, right? Released from upsets in the past. And why are they upset? Because they have so many unethical and unmoral actions. So if they've now confronted all of that, does it then stand to reason that they will continue to do it? Of course not. This is like saying, congratulations, here is your certificate, I'm going to shake your hand, you are now clear. And 5 minutes later saying, oh, you've all of a sudden become unclear. Alright? This just doesn't happen. Now, granted, over a period of time, if somebody to really make the effort, yeah, they could become unclear. But under normal circumstances, would that then happen? So how does it make any sense to then continue to sec check people, look into their actions, have them write up overts and withholds? It is completely unnecessary. Why? Because all of the case factors that would then cause those things to affect somebody and to do erroneous actions are gone. They have been addressed. All that charge, all those chains, all those incidents, all the overts, all the withholds, all the miswithholds have been pulled. They are an ethically sound individual from that point forward, or there would have been no point in the first place. So, here again, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot enforce ethics under any circumstances. Now, that being said, there is also a large mistake in the application of ethics. A lot of people think the ethics formulas in admin are one and the same thing. No, ladies and gentlemen, they're completely separate things. Okay? Ethics, admin, completely different sections. Now, people think there's some type of crossover or something like this, or that because someone's individual, or because administrative stats are down, this individual's personal stats are down. That again is equally asinine. Someone could be on post in an org, right? They could be the HCO secretary. They could have all their lines in. They can be on post, take all their correct duties and actions into account for the day, do them, carry them out. And you know what? Newsflash. No one was interested in Scientology that day. Nobody walked through the doors. Now, is this individual's personal stats down? Of course not. Nobody showed up. No one was interested that day. It's that simple. But a lot of times this individual then gets assigned lower ethics conditions, and they have to go through it. Sometimes they have to get retrained. A person can sometimes take every action necessary and do every action and fulfill every obligation of their post and still be downstat. And it may or may not have to do with the person. Now, if this happens on occasion, we can reasonably say, hey, they're one cog within a much larger machine that's of an organizational structure. And sometimes not all things come together. Sometimes people don't show up. Sometimes communication lines go out. These things occur. Now, does that mean we should just enforce ethics on this person? No, you have to. No. You need to be sec checked. What overts or withholds have you committed? That's just stupid. If you thought that somebody was underperforming at that point, by the time you're done enforcing ethics, you're going to cave the poor guy in, and he's really going to be underperforming. Because now he's lost all confidence in what he's doing, because there was no basis for doing that in the first place. So again, ladies and gentlemen, administrative statistics and ethics are completely different things. Right? Ethics exists there, for instance. Now, say something is missed on an individual, right? And they're displaying behaviors that indicate they're letting their case interfere with a post. Then ethics may be necessary. You say, hey Joe, look, man, this has been observed to be going on. Would you be willing to take a look at that, man? You know, your stats been kind of down lately. You know, maybe yeah. Hey, why don't you and I sit down here, man? You know, maybe go over some of these ethics formulas. Maybe see if you're, you know, not working the wrong one. And see what you might be able to do to improve that, man. You know, as your friend, I'm just giving you a heads up on this. I think, you know, we should just sit down and go over this. Worst case scenario, we're wrong about it. That is how you get ethics in. You don't take the book with the ethics formula and hit someone upside the head. You say, hey, man, you see this over here? You see this circumstance here? Hey, what's going on with that? You get them to look. This is ethics, people. They have to look. They have to determine what is right or wrong. I cannot tell them that. Period. Can't enforce that on them. And we're not in the business of doing this. We're in the business of creating self-determined beings. And how do we create self-determined beings? Through auditing, through processing, and allowing them to look and then act upon their own self-determinism. Within reason. Because at the end of the day, all people are still individuals. And you want to know something? The hardest people to ever deal with and address are people that assume they're OT, they're upper level on the bridge. They always have an opinion about something. They've had some auditing, they've gotten some grades in, they've got some training in, so they think they have it all figured out. Right? And a lot of times they have it ass backwards and wrong. But that's okay. That's not a criticism. You know, it's a great thing. It's a fantastic thing. It's like a butterfly coming out of their cocoon. Here you have a person budding and growing into an amazing, self-determined, and pan-determined spiritual being. That's what we're supposed to be doing here. And the only way that can happen is to let them make decisions within reason that are either right or wrong, and then let them determine for themselves what was right, what was wrong, and what they can do moving forward into the future that will be the greatest benefit across the greatest number of dynamics. You see? And again, a big problem and issue with this, in addition to enforcing ethics, is there's no auditing being done in orgs. You have people on staff. You have people that have never studied ethics. They've never even read Introduction to Scientology Ethics. They don't know what the formulas are. And therefore, they're not benefiting from ethics. There is a whole nother amazing side to that technology. You know why we keep statistics? You know why I said the ethics formula is like magic? It goes back to an axiom and a statement I always like to make. And it's a policy as well, but if it is not written, then it isn't so. And what does that mean? If it's not jotted down, if it's not written and manifested on a sheet of paper in 3 dimensions in our universe, for all intents and purposes, it might as well not even exist. And the beauty about ethics formulas and why they work so well is not only are they fundamentally and axiomatically based upon universal laws, but when you actually write these formulas out, you're making this so. Right? You know what I personally do? I have my own ethics right here. Matter of fact, see? Now I like to chart personally, right? See? I have my graph here. So you can see that, ladies and gentlemen. Probably not very well. But nonetheless, I have my statistics graph. And then in addition to that, I have an extra sheet for each day. And every time I just keep it simple. When I commit a personal action, get up, make your bed, answer communications, brush your teeth, right? Any action that is a plus and a contribution to your dynamics or the greater dynamics as a whole that is outside of a normal daily activity, I put a +1 on there. That's simple. If it's something extraordinary or a little bit out of the ordinary, for instance, a new client, a new communication on my lines, which is, a potential client or friend in the future, a financial donation, I mark these as a +2. Now, something that is extremely rare and out of the, is extraordinary, I should say, I put a +3. Okay? And then I have my graph divided by the days here, or the weeks, excuse me, so 7 days each week, and then by 30 days. And for each one of those days, I will then take these +1, +2, +3 marks. I will add those all up, get the median or the average, right? So I'll take the total number, I'll take the total number of pluses divided by how many they were total. Then I'll take that average. So if it's 1.2, 2.5, then I'll mark that all the way up to 100. Each day being divided into 10. And that's how I chart my individual statistics. But the beauty about this, ladies and gentlemen, is in conjunction with these statistics, that enables me to keep track of what I'm doing. Now I have my separate ethics formula, or an admin skill, for instance. Okay? Now if I have an admin skill or an ethics formula, these are the outline steps of the things in which I need to do on a day-to-day basis, right? To then enact those. And I've put in those ideals down on paper. And not only have I put in those ideals down on paper, I am tracking them with my statistics and graph. How much of that am I following through with on a day-to-day basis? And if there's any negative actions that detract too much out of the ordinary from my normal day-to-day activities, I mark those as a minus point. And I will ensure to not do that in the future. And in doing this, ladies and gentlemen, what it does is it has you postulating and manifesting and enacting these things in the physical universe. And that's why it's like magic. Because not only are you putting it there with an ethics formula or an admin skill, you're tracking it and you're monitoring it with the statistics to enable you to see, to visualize, and oftentimes cognite on what you are either doing correctly or wrongly. And that is why ethics are so important. And what I mean by they're not being applied is I meet very, very few people anymore, especially in the independent field, that even bother to keep statistics. That for one, know what they are, two, know how to actually do them and keep track of them, and three, that just do or don't do them, period. And that comes under the heading of them not being applied. So on one hand, you have them being applied, and on the other, you have them being misapplied. But all the data that I have given you here should be able to emphasize how ethics should be done and how they are properly done. But the most important principle of all this is never, ever enforce them upon anybody. I had a gentleman recently, and I don't want to go into specific details too much, but this gentleman, and you know who you are, by the way, a very good friend, was working with another CS. Now, this particular CS had managed to get this gentleman all the way through to OT7. Now, recently I had mentioned in an HCL policy letter of October 23rd of this year, entitled The Final Analysis, that there was never a codified and released version of OT8. It was still in research stages upon my passing last lifetime. Okay? So it just didn't exist. So this gentleman contacted me for advice and said, well, given infinity procedure and all the amazing technology and wins that I'm seeing from that technology, what should logically be my next step? I've just now completed my OT7, which happened to be, unfortunately, audited knots. Now, or solo knots, excuse me. Now, I simply said you may want to ask your CS about the given source of those materials because it's not mine. Huh. There is no OTA. What else can I say about it? I never codified and released an OTA. So you may want to ask about the source of those materials and exactly, what that person is delivering and CSing. And of course, that's for you to make that determination, I tell him. And he then gets back to me and says this person puts him in a condition of doubt about choosing a new L. Ron Hubbard or old L. Ron Hubbard, like there's any fucking difference. And here's a prime example of enforcing ethics upon somebody. You're, for whatever reason, as a CS now telling this person, you're in a condition of doubt, sir. You need to now choose which route you want to take. Like this is the dark side or the good side or some other nonsense. It's either LRH or it's not LRH. I'm one and the same being, so what the hell? Now, I understand a lot of people have difficulty with that. And now, of course, you could have handled this in a completely different manner, this CS, but to throw a guy in a condition of doubt because he's trying to be self-determined, he's simply asking you what the source of the materials out here are that you use, that is quite unfortunate. And this is another case of enforcing ethics upon somebody. And it should not be done. And by the way, this gentleman was smart enough and self-determined enough to say, oh, wow, man, I would have never thought this of this particular person. After all the work I've done with them, they basically resorted to being someone on a playground in the schoolyard. Says, oh, well, you need to choose between them or me. Completely skirting the whole purpose of this. And that was to get this gentleman through as far as we possibly could with the technology and make him as spiritually aware and self-determined as possible. But that's either here nor there, and it's water under the bridge at this point. But in any event, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this tech discussion here, or lecture, however you decide to look at it, was enlightening and has clarified exactly what ethics are, why we use them, and the do's and don'ts regarding ethics. And again, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is L. Ron Hubbard. I'd like to wish you all a great evening, and I will be talking to you again soon. Good night.